Hey there, in this video we are going to see very interesting topic, that is function with default argument. Now this topic is very interesting because it will make our life easy. So in C++, whenever we define a function and in each and every function we can have some arguments, right? So we define a function and that function can have some argument. So we can have a function with zero number of argument. The function can have one argument, it can have two argument, it can have four argument, it can have 10 argument, it can have n arguments. Sometimes it may happen that we don't actually want to pass all the arguments. Sometimes it may happen that we may need to pass, or we just want to pass only 2 arguments out of 10. We don't want to pass rest 8 arguments. So if you want to do that, then in that case what you can do, you can assign some default values to the argument. So if you don't pass the argument, or if you don't pass rest of the argument, then the compiler will take the default values that you have assigned to the arguments. So let's include header files. Okay, so let's say we have a function called as add. Let's say this function is going to take 4 arguments. So let's say int number 1, comma int number 2, comma int number 3, int number 4. Okay, and it will return number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3 plus number 4. Okay, and let's call this function over here. So let me write cout addition of 10, 20, 30, 40 is equal to add 10, 20, 30, 40 followed by engl. Okay, now this, if we execute this code, let's quickly compile and execute this code. So let me write my file name. My file name in this case is 04. Okay, and let's execute it. You can see we are getting output as 100. Okay, now what if I want to take addition of 2 numbers? I want to calculate addition of 2 numbers using the same function. Okay, so let's say I want to calculate what is the addition of 10 and 20. So let's say I want to write addition of 10 and 20 is equal to add 10, 20. But if we write something like this, then the compiler is going to show an error, or compiler will throw an error, and compiler will say that too few arguments in the function call. So what compiler means by this error? Compiler is saying that the function needs 4 arguments and you are passing only 2 arguments. Okay, so the function needs 4 arguments but you are passing only 2 arguments, and it's not allowed, it's not valid. So what should we do then? Okay, so for this there is a solution in C++ that you can assign default values to your argument, and if you assign default values to your argument, in that case you can skip those arguments, or you can skip passing those arguments in function call. Okay, so let's see this awesome thing, how we can assign default argument. There are few rules when you are going to assign default arguments in C++ to C++ functions. So let's quickly see them. The first rule is, whenever you have to assign a default argument, okay, you will have to do it something like this. Let's say you want to skip passing this number 4 value. So in that case you can assign it a default value like this. You can write something like this: int number 4 is equal to 0. Okay, okay, so let's see how it will work. So let's say I am calling this function like this. Okay, so what I am doing, I am calling this add function, and in this case I am passing only 3 parameters. So in this case what will happen? Compiler will assign these 3 parameters from left to right. So this 10 will get assigned over here, this 20 will get assigned over here, this 30 will get assigned over here, that is number 3. Okay, now for number 4 we don't have any input, or we are not passing any input. So in this case what compiler is doing? Compiler is taking default value, which is 0 in this case. So how we are giving the default value? we are writing is equal to followed by the default value. So in this case, number 1 is going to be 10, number 2 is going to be 20, number 3 is going to be 30, and number 4 is going to be 0, because we are not passing number 4, and that's why the compiler is going to take default value. Now what will happen if we pass number 4? So in this case, we are passing number 4, that is 40, right? So in this case, compiler is going to take the value that we are passing. Okay, in this case, compiler is not going to take the default value. So what is the rule? The rule is, if the user is not providing, or if the program is not providing the value for the argument, in that case the compiler will take default value. If the programmer is providing some value to the argument, in that case compiler will take that particular value which the programmer is providing or which programmer is passing. Okay, so in this case, in the first case, we are passing value 40 to the number 4 argument or to the last argument. So in that case, number 4 will become 40. And in the second case, where we are not passing any value to the number 4 argument or to the last argument, so in that case number 4 will become 0. So as simple as that. Okay, now the next rule is, whenever you supply a default argument to any argument, whenever you supply default to any argument of the function, all the arguments or all the parameters to its right side should have default arguments. So what this rule says, whenever you give default argument to any one of the argument of your function, all the argument to its right side should compulsory have the default argument. So let me quickly show you by example. Let's say I am giving default argument to this number 2 argument. Okay, to the second argument I am giving default value as 0. So what the compiler is saying, all the arguments to its right side should also have default value. Okay, so as I am giving default value to number 2 argument, now it's my responsibility to provide default value to all the arguments which are present on the right hand side of the number 2 argument. So I want to give default over here, I have to give it over here and also over here, and now the compiler will be just fine. Okay, so just remember, this is a very important rule. Whenever you are giving default, all values or all the parameters on the right side should also have default. Okay, now why is it so? Whenever you give default argument to any of the parameter or to any of the argument, in that case what is going to happen, whenever you call a function, compiler will assign values from the left hand side. Okay, so let's say you are passing 2 values. So this 10 will be assigned to first argument, 20 will be assigned to second argument. Okay, now let's say the second argument has default value, but third and fourth don't have the default value. So in that case, the compiler will have a confusion that where to assign these values or to where actually to assign these parameters. So that's the reason whenever you define or whenever you pass a default value to any argument, all the arguments on the right hand side should also have default value. So what compiler is going to do, it is going to be very simple for the compiler now. Whatever value user is passing, compiler is going to assign them from left to right. Okay, and once the values that user is supplying are done, then whatever arguments are remaining, so for those arguments the default value will be considered. Okay, so in this way the compiler will work. So let's quickly see what we get as the output if we run this code. You can see in the first case we are getting output as 100. In the second case, we are getting answer as 30, where we are adding 10 and 20. Okay, so our program is getting executed very successfully. So I hope you are very clear with the idea of how you can assign default value to the argument and what are the 2 rules that you need to keep in your mind. So the first rule says that if you pass value while calling from or while calling the function, in that case, whatever value you are passing will be considered or will be given more priority than the default value. This is the first rule. And the second rule says that whenever you assign default value to any parameter of the function, all the parameters on its right side should also have default value. Okay, so this is very interesting concept and this is very useful concept, because now if you want to add 4 numbers, you can use same function. If you want to add 2 numbers, you can use the same function, because if you pass 2 values, in that case number 1 and number 2 will be having 10 and 20 as its value, number 3 and number 4 will be 0 0. So if you add 0 to any number, then it will not be any issue, right? So we are using same function and we can call same function with different number of arguments, and this is the beauty of this concept. So I hope you have got a very good idea about how we can use default arguments in C++.